Hey guys, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program Nitro. I have a pretty special episode that I'm starting here. It's the start of my new little mini series, kind of like the Moho rescue mission, only this one is a lot better because we are going to build a base of operations on Duna. And to start this off, I have a really nifty thing I want to share with you guys that I haven't seen anywhere else yet. So this might be a first for some of you. Hopefully it's a first for all of you, but you never know. I've been experimenting with using the jet engines to actually lift the craft up through Kerban's atmosphere and then using transfer rockets to get it into orbit and actually refitting the entire vessel after it's already in orbit with new engines that will actually take it to its destination, wherever that might be. So what we have here is my brand spanking new, just built it today, Duna Command Center. So this is actually a space station that I'm going to land on the planet Duna through the atmosphere, and then it's going to be our base on the ground. And as you can see here, there is landing legs on all of these, as well as ladders so the Kerbals can get in and out. We have living quarters on the outside here, as well as our main command tower up here throughout the middle. There's parachutes on the majority of this. I also have some science equipment here. Now this is the sandbox mode of my game, so science equipment won't do anything, but I did want to put it on there because I do plan on actually rebuilding this inside of the career mode and then doing the exact same mission in career mode to get this onto Duna. Lots of SAS modules. These aerodynamic parts are just for looks, really. And I also put ram air intake engines on the side just because it looks cool. I like the way that all this sits on there, as well as these radial air intake engines, just so it looks a little different. RCS is on there if you need it, although this thing handles beautifully in space with the SAS system alone. You don't need to use the RCS, but it is there for docking for those of you who aren't as good maneuvering for docking maneuvers or stuff like that, or if you have problems, or if you're trying to dock a different craft to the ship instead, and you don't, like if you have problems running out of power with the other craft, or just anything that might go wrong, you have emergency RCS, so that's what that's there for. And it also looks good, so it takes up space, gives the craft a little bit more cool looking shape, and things like that. And then up here on the top, I actually had just this little part up there to begin with, but then I had this other tower here that I put on my new space station I just put into orbit around Kerban for now. I'm going to put the space station in orbit around Duna later, and it is the Gagarin space station, named after Yuri Gagarin, the Russian cosmonaut. So, good stuff. But this tower is our solar tower, so these are solar arrays up on top of here. I also have some smaller solar panels here, and then communications tower all the way on the top, and a couple lights to light it up, and also lights on the bottom everywhere, lights. And it actually lights up pretty nice in space, and it's pretty happy with it. What else? Yeah, so a Kerbal can easily go all the way up and down. Now, with the new shocks that they added, with the new landing legs, I actually found that the new landing legs with the air cushion shocks were not ideal for the base, so I actually went back to using these more solid, tiny lander struts, and these actually work really nicely because this thing isn't going to be landing very fast, and we're looking at like 5 or 6 meters per second. Even in Duna's thinner atmosphere, we're going to be using the power of the parachutes mixed with these landing rockets that I have here on the sides of every part of the craft. So these landing rockets have enough power just by themselves to lift the entire base off of Kerban, so they'll have more than enough power to handle Duna. Alright, so that's that. Moving on, what we have here on the bottom is a large decoupler. Now what's going to happen is when we go to launch, I'm going to launch it with the power of all of these air intake engines. It's just a massive amount of jet engines on the bottom here. And what these things do is they draw in their fuel from the larger fuel tanks here on the center, so you don't even need to attach extra fuel to any of these. They handle all that through these. And then these will only go up to a certain altitude, but they have enough power to lift the entire station all the way up through Kerban's entire atmosphere, for the most part. Well, you know, about 20,000 meters, 22,000 give or take, which is really, really good, because then we don't have to build this huge elaborate rocket to get us all the way up there. We can just use the power of the air itself. And then underneath all this, I have some 650 rocket max engines, so this one right here, if you can see it. And that's underneath all of these decouplers. And then that's going to use up the remaining fuel in these large fuel tanks that all of these sit on. Now all these are actually going to jettison off once we hit that window at the top there at about 20,000 meters. So that gets rid of all this extra weight, and it also shuts all of them down because they don't have any fuel anymore. And then the regular rockets that we have on the bottom of all this is going to push the rest of the base up into a high enough apoapsis to where we can start our orbital burn. So once we have that high apoapsis, we then jettison all of this off, and we have some smaller, these 215 power rockets right here underneath all of these decouplers. And then that will have more than enough fuel to get us into any orbit we want and also do our inclination burn. So, you know, if we want 100,000 meters, 200,000 meters, whatever, you can get any orbit you desire with these engines with this much fuel. And that's all you need. And of course, if you do need more fuel, you can just always activate these landing engines and use their fuel and then refuel it and then attach the new rockets. Now, the really special thing about this, and this is something I wanted to do for a while, was actually have refittable engines on the bottom of a craft. So the idea here is after you get this up into space and it's in orbit and you're done, you're going to have fuel remaining in these pods, but since they're on decouplers, you can decouple these tanks from the decouplers, and then you can launch up a brand new engine with its own fuel supply and attach it onto each one of these decouplers. And then that is going to be your engines that you're going to use to burn out to Duna. So that's kind of the new technology I'm toying with here. Is the process is lifted up through the atmosphere with air-powered engines, then use a burn engine to achieve your desired apoapsis altitude, and then use an orbital engine to get your craft into orbit, and then refit the craft with whatever engines with however much fuel you want. And that way, you don't have to worry about refueling the craft or anything like that, because the engine that you bring up there will already have maximum fuel. So, that's the plan. And going along with this, I did build a spin-off of my, my spare tank that I had, and that is the refit engine. So I'll load this one in here for you guys just so you can see what I'm going to be doing. I'm only going to do this once, and then I'm going to do the other 4 off screen. But what this is this is our engine that we're going to attach onto the base once it's in orbit. So once the base is already in orbit, we have a large decoupler here, and this is an unmanned craft, so we have this unmanned pod up here with SAS and RCS systems, so that way we can dock this thing to our base, and it just has one nuclear engine on the bottom here, so we're going to get maximum efficiency out of this humongous fuel silo. So that's the plan. If this winds up being too much weight, I can always change it. So I can always take this fuel silo out and bring in one of these double fuel silos if we need that much fuel, you know. We'll just have to experiment. But it should be more than enough fuel to make it all the way. With just because we're gonna have 5 of these, so it should be good. If it's not, we can always give it more power, so we can exchange that with, you know, maybe one of these max power 50. I don't know, 390, 800. I don't know. We'll just have to experiment and see what happens. But this should work. This will work actually. This I know will work. Hopefully. And then we also have the RCS to assist us going the rest of the way if we need to, so we can use the extra power of the RCS because we won't need this after we get to Duna. But this will handle all of our Duna orbital maneuvers, and it will also be what we'll use even while we're entering the atmosphere, because the base will be able to jettison all of these extra engines before we actually land. So, good stuff. Good stuff. Alright. I believe... Oh yeah, I guess I can show you Gagarin's station. I'll just show it to you in space. It's already put together. Ready to go. Alright, so... yes, here's one last thing. Before we head to the launch, this is another nifty little thing that I first toyed with. So, again, air power to get something out of the atmosphere. So, this little craft right here is capable of escaping the entire Kerban solar system all on its own. And as you can see, there's not much to it. Jet engines lift it up through the atmosphere, and then you burn every single one of these large liquid fuel engines here, and that gets you the rest of the way. This escapes Kerban entirely, and then you use this little engine attached to your pod to go the rest of the way, and then it can push itself pretty good under the power of these ion engines, which are powered through the solar panels. And it's one-seater pod, but this thing can make it to any planet in the entire solar system, one man only. So I might be using this to transfer crew members and stuff like that out to Duna, just as a one-way ticket. But yeah, I actually sent Bill up into space, and he left the entire solar system. So, but Bill's back. I have him as part of our crew. But I'm going to be putting these different craft and things, as well as my entire Duna ship loadout that I'm going to be sending there up for download. Not in the descriptions in this video, but in a later video after I have all of the Duna parts put together. So I have more stuff on the way, more very cool stuff. This base is not done. It's going to have so many parts. We're going to have hangars for Armadillo APCs. We're also going to have a hangar just for the rovers. We're going to have a solar array behind the base that's going to capture solar energy. And then I'm also going to have a refueling station for Duna space planes. Now, air intake engines do not work on Duna, of course, but that's not going to stop me. I'm going to build a plane that can fly on Duna with rocket power and be able to refuel it while it's still on the surface at a refueling station next to the base. So all that is to come, but yeah, for now I'm just going to launch this base up into orbit and show you guys how to fly it when you're ready to fly it. I'm actually probably going to put this up for download in the descriptions. In fact, I will, because this thing's ready to go. Fly it as I fly it here, and you'll have no problem with it. And then I'm going to show you guys a docking of one of the engines onto the bottom here. Now, one of the other things that you can do is you can dock 4 engines, and then on the central one you can put a different payload. So you can pull along another small lander ship or something like that on the bottom of this thing. You don't have to have 5 engines, but it is recommended. That's what I'm going to do. I think the large fuel silo might actually be a bit too heavy, but we'll see. If it's too heavy, we can always undock it and launch up a new engine. We're not stuck with any engines that we put on here, which is the beautiful thing about it. So we'll see what happens. But without further ado, here we go. Alright, so now that we're out here on the launch pad, I'll just give you guys a quick rundown of the current action groups I have set up for this. So if you hit 1 on your keyboard, it's going to deploy all the solar panels and antennas and everything. So you can see all those deploy there like that, all nice and beautifully. And they do have, you know, a little bit of clearance below these aerodynamic towers here. If you don't like these towers, I understand. I kind of wanted to replace them and make them smaller, but I didn't. There you go. There's the solar tower and communications tower all deployed in all of its glory. You can hit 1 again to retract all that. Let's see. 2 activates and deactivates all of the landing engines. And then 3 activates all of the ladders. So you can see there, every single ladder on the entire ship deploys all at once. And when this thing is on the ground, these tiny yellow ladders here do have enough clearance to actually go down all the way into ground. So no matter where this thing lands, even if you landed this thing on Eve for whatever reason, who would want to do that anyways, but if you did, the Kerbal would be able to grab the ladder and get wherever he needs to go on this entire vessel. So it can land absolutely anywhere. On atmosphere, on a moon, anywhere you want to take this thing, it can land. Because again, these engines do have an insane amount of power. One last thing, before you actually do launch, just as out of habit, so nothing bad happens, I like to disable crossfeed from all of these docking clamps, just so we don't actually accidentally use any of the fuel that we don't want to use. And there we go. Alright, time for launch. And it is daytime, which is also good. Sorry guys, I actually hit the cockpit view and I had no idea what key actually did that. I am using a new keyboard, so C, it turns out, is toggle your cockpit view, and the spacebar is actually right next to the C key on this gamepad, so my bad. But yeah, after you jettison all of the engines on there, you will actually lose sound from all of them colliding and exploding into each other. But the beautiful thing about this is you don't have to worry about your gravity turn until you're already done with your first stage of all the air intake engines, and then you just angle it to a 45-degree angle and then follow your prograde marker after you're in orbit all the way. So even though we did burn a little bit straight up, that's really not going to be much of an issue. We'll get sound back after these engines cut off and they run out of fuel. I'd never actually intentionally went inside cockpit view yet, so that's why. Alright, so 70,000, it's looking good. Just constantly follow this prograde marker now. Just see how high it gets. 80,000 is usually where I like to have it, but if it goes higher, that's fine. Ah, there it goes. Alright. So that is all of our main fuel, and now we can use the orbital engines. Yeah, because we went inside our cockpit view early, we actually don't have enough fuel in these to burn all the way, which is odd, but whatever. we can remedy that. So there you go, that's all you gotta do. You gotta decouple all those nodes and you're good. Now we don't actually want to activate the next stage because that'll jettison everything here, but what we can do is hit 2. And there we go. Now we have, let's see, I'll just get 90,000. Oh, what am I doing? Alright, 90,000, 117 is a bit much. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink that. So all those engines that I just decoupled are actually going to splash down. That's okay. We did use some of our landing engine fuel, but again, the beauty of this is we can refuel it. So not a big problem, although it is kind of a minor setback for my plans. I'm not going to film the refueling, obviously, but I will film the refitting of the nuclear engines, but only one of them, and only to the middle. Alright. So 2 saves the day. Again, we had spare fuel in this, so that's okay. I guess it is a little heavier now since I added all this extra stuff. I didn't have this tower on here before. When I did all my test flights, I only had the little communications tower on the top of this thing, so all this extra weight made us need more fuel to actually get it moving. So keep that in mind. Although if I replaced the fuel tanks on the bottom of the 650 power rockets with a bigger version of them, then we wouldn't have this problem. Then we'd have plenty of fuel. Because I only used a little bit. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this done, and then I'll align our inclination to the moon. Because we're cool like that. Let's see. It's a bit much, but that's okay. We have SAS. As you can see on the nav ball, this thing turns very smoothly. And it looks like we're going to be right on the money. Alright, that looks good enough. So only up by a couple hundred meters, that's ideal. Alright, so now we need, where is it? It's Ike. Moon. Set as target. Yeah, looks like this is going to be our next one. Not off by that much either. That's pretty good. Is this the wrong way? That is the wrong way. Can't read it because the other numbers are in the way, but that's 0.0, which is what we want. And now, since we're on the dark side, you guys can see the lights. So, boom. Lights everywhere. It's very bright since I have all these extra lights on the top. Again, I didn't have this tower on here before. But you do have an option if you want to take the tower off and just replace it with that communications tower on the top. That's the way it was originally designed. But this works. It's fine. It'll do the job. Only 25.2 meters per second there for our burn, so that's fine. And look at that, it just turns very smoothly. It's got SAS absolutely everywhere. Sweet. 5 minutes. And 5 seconds. Perfect. Alright. So that gives us our perfect little orbit. 0.0 looks good. 90,000 and 90,000. Awesome. Only off by a couple 100 meters again. But now we have a perfect orbit. And these lights can stay on virtually forever because there are some thermoelectric generators on here. And every time you pass by the sun, you're going to have some solar panel somewhere that's getting solar energy. So, but we don't want these lights on forever. So I'm just going to turn those off. Make sure we're rotated here to perfect normal, which looks good. And now I'm going to hit 2 again, deactivating all of our landing engines. That way when we come back up here, all those engines should be repacked away within that stage that I got them from. And if we speed up time and get back into the daylight side of Kerban. And there you go. The station is in space, or our base is in space. Whichever way you prefer. But there we go. So now I'm just going to refuel this thing off camera, and then I'm going to send up our first engine. So you guys will be brought back in after the refueling is complete, and I'm ready to launch the first engine on the launch pad. Alright, so here we are now on the launch pad. I refueled the Duna command center basically with the exact same assembly. I used the spare tank model that I had instead of the quick refuel. It turned out to be a lot faster that way, and we only needed a little bit of that fuel that's in this tank anyways to get the job done. So now this is going to be the first engine, first one of our nuclear engines I'm going to attach to the Duna command center that's currently orbiting us. And we have to launch right now. We have to launch without things exploding or decoupling as well. I have no idea why that happened. If it's the same tank every time, then we'll know what the problem is, but shouldn't have done that. I'll try it a little softer this time, see if that helps. Detaching for some stupid reason. Oh, I hate it when this happens. So now troubleshooting is going to be a pain in the butt. I really don't know. It looks like they're all just detaching from the decoupler itself, which they shouldn't be. It's just stupid. Try it again. If it doesn't work, we're gonna have to go to plan B. I mean, everything's on the launch pad, although for some reason this one here is going inside of the, actually a couple of these look like they're going inside the tanks. That might be what's causing it. Let's see what happens. I see what's happening. Whenever it's set down on the launch pad, it's actually causing a structural failure on the rest of the ship below the engine, it seems. Because our engine still works, and RCS is working, so everything up here works, but everything below it is being destroyed because this thing is stupid. So now we have to fix this. Oh boy. And there's no way to really fix it because I can't get one of these here. Perfect. Try something else. Try plan B. Alright, so if this happens to you guys, what I think is happening here is it's catching all of these outer tanks, but then all the weight of this entire center tank is causing something to snap on the inside there, and that's no good. So to fix this, we need to support all the rest of the weight of the center and these other things all by themselves. So to do that, we're going to put a decoupler here with a plate right on the bottom of that decoupler, and then one docking clamp, come on, right there. And then we want that and the docking clamp to all just be in the same spot, and then we can just duplicate this, and that looks like 6 times symmetry, yes, like so. And double check, and everything looks good. So now this should support all the rest of the weight of everything, and hopefully we don't have structural failure. So let's see what happens. If this doesn't work, we'll have to go to plan C. And I don't want to go to plan C because it takes more time. And plan C would be using an airlift to get this darn thing up there. Hopefully we don't have to resort to that, so let's see what happens. Alright, plan C. I did not want it to come to this. But it leaves me with no choice. So, Plan C involves taking all this junk and getting rid of it. And then, if this doesn't work, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Thanks to our new update, we have sub-assemblies, and I think I'm just gonna go ahead and use the Atlas 2 lift stage instead of the larger airlift. And let's see what's going on here. Actually, yes. Go ahead and put that on there like that. Just so everything is nice and supported. Gonna add lots of NASA grade duct tape, everything we can. So hopefully that solves our problem. I really have no idea what I would do if this doesn't work. Alright, now we need to set up the staging again. So at the end of everything, this one needs to eject and this rocket needs to fire. Actually, that rocket doesn't need to fire, that rocket needs to be separate. Alright, all these go, then all this goes, these go, and then we're good. Alright, that looks fine. So, I'm just gonna save this now. This doesn't work. Plan D. The big airlift. I really hope I don't have to do that. So far, so good. Nothing exploded. And that was almost half, too. Well, if we have learned anything from this, it's that the airlift works, we just need more fuel and more power to get it actually up into the air. So I'm gonna have to go and make some adjustments and get back. The stupid spare tank thing would have worked, should have worked, but it didn't work. The spare tank by itself worked just fine, so all I did was add an engine to the bottom, and then it just decides to fall apart for no reason whatsoever. But this works now. Just need to make a few minor adjustments, and then this design for the Atlas II airlift will be good to go. This is definitely a heavier object than what's usually used to lifting up into space. And we have seen that that almost used half the fuel, so all I need to do is add the 720 tank to the bottom of this, and then it's good to go. I could attach this one as it is right now, but we did use up some fuel in there, even transferring all that back into this. So I'm actually not going to use this engine here, which really sucks. I am disappointed that the other one just decided to fall apart. But anyways, on a lighter note, I'll show you guys Gagarin Station. This station is going to be our operational station that is in orbit around Duna while we're there. And then I probably am also going to put a fuel depot in orbit around Duna as well. So big base of operations for Duna. So now that we're on the daytime side of the planet, you guys can see what this thing's all about. This is Gagarin Station, and as you can see, this is the exact same solar tower that I had up on top of our base, the Duna Command Center base, but this is where I originally had used it, with a parachute on top as well, just in case this thing did have to deorbit. Hopefully we could save some of it. But this one is not meant for atmospheric re-entry. Even though I have parachutes on there, they're just for show. If we did have to abandon the space station and destroy it for whatever reason, we would load our Kerbals into these escape pods, and these are emergency escape pods for the space station. So the idea here is, once you blow the lock, it'll fire the jettison rockets, and then you have a solid booster that deorbits you into whatever planet you're orbiting. And then you jettison that solid booster, and then you just have this one powerful parachute and the landing legs for landing. And they have a dual battery pack on both of them, so there's enough power to get them through whatever they need, as well as a thermally electric generator on there, so they can regenerate these batteries. So the pod will survive forever, for the most part. I do have a bunch of docking ports around the station, so I will be able to dock different landers and stuff like that to it. A couple of different areas up on here for loading in a bunch of crew members onto our station while it's in orbit. And these nuclear engines here are engines that's going to take this thing over to Duna. Hopefully we have enough fuel. If we don't, we can always refuel it. On the bottom here, this is a nifty little craft. This is our transfer pod. So this pod is going to take crew members down and back up from Duna, so it can land just with all the parachutes by itself, and then we use all the fuel inside of these fuel tanks to get it back up into orbit. And if this winds up not having enough power to actually get it back up into orbit around Duna, then the plan is to have a attachment that this thing will then land and sit on the planet, and then we can launch a larger craft up to dock. So I don't really see that as being a problem if we do a test flight and we find out we need more fuel. it's got a docking port, so all we have to do is undock it and then dock it to a separate engine, and we're good to go. Yeah. So that's this little craft's design here. It has enough room for 2 people, so one in this main pod, one in the lander can, so we can transfer 1 crew member at a time down to the surface and back up if we need to. And it also has a secondary function as a orbital tug, so anything with a docking port that's the standard size, you can attach this thing onto while it's in orbit, and you can use its engines to pull it wherever you need to, so it's kind of like an orbital tug by itself. There are lights on the station, so you have your lights on the bottom there, as well as we have our main lights, which are all the way up top on the tower, like you've already seen. Had a bunch of probe cores around this thing and communications gear, just in case you did want to conduct science. I do want to remake this again in the campaign mode and actually use it for science missions, but no science in sandbox because we already have everything unlocked that we need. Same action group, 1 toggles everything in there. I don't know if I have 2 set up for engine shutdown or not. I don't think I do. But yeah, this is our Duna space station that we're going to have, named Gagarin Station. Right now it's just classified as a ship, but once we get it in orbit around Duna, I'll change its designation to the Gagarin Station. The fuel depot will be a separate station that I think I'm just going to have a few thousand meters off in the distance, so that way these things don't render each other in the same area. So at bare minimum 2.3 kilometer separation, but it's probably going to be like 10 or more, something like that. So yeah, I'll probably have the main station orbiting at 100,000 meters, and then our fuel depot probably at like 150, 200, somewhere around there. Or I might put it in orbit around Ike and just have them in 2 different locations, but we'll see. A couple guys in here. We have 1 guy up here on the top, and then 2 Kerbals in this first little crew hatch down here, and that's it. RCS on this thing as well, although we don't need it because again this thing handles just like our base with all the SAS. So next episode I will have our engines figured out and ready to go. I'm gonna put 4 of them on there, and then I can just film the last one going up into orbit and docking with our base, and then we can send the base off to Duna finally. So that'll all be in the next episode. Check the download link that I'll have in the descriptions, and you guys can have fun with the I'm gonna have Gagarin Station, I'm gonna have the transfer pod, and the Duna base. So the Duna Command Center. Yeah, that's all for this episode. See you guys later. Hope you guys enjoyed a little showcase of the station and our Duna base that successfully made it into orbit despite our difficulties with the engines, but I will resolve those and put those in the next episode. Take care.